Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow and everything starts going wrong. The opportunity you were counting on disappears. Someone you trusted disappoints you. A problem you never expected suddenly lands in your lap. The future you pictured in your mind begins to crack. Most people have experienced some version of this. Maybe not all at once, but sooner or later, life has a way of testing everyone. And when those moments arrive, something interesting happens. The advice that sounded good during easy times suddenly feels useless. Motivational quotes stop working. Positive thinking feels fake. And you are left asking a question that human beings have been asking for thousands of years. How do you stay strong when life becomes difficult? Nearly 2,000 years ago, one man faced that question almost every day. His name was Marcus Aurelius. Today, people remember him as a philosopher. Some remember him as a Stoic. Others remember him as one of the greatest Roman emperors in history. But before he was any of those things, he was simply a human being trying to survive hardship. And that is what makes his words so powerful. Because they were not written from a peaceful garden. They were not written from a comfortable palace. They were written during war, during uncertainty, during disease, during betrayal, during some of the darkest moments of his life. And yet, what Marcus Aurelius discovered about hard times still feels surprisingly relevant today. In fact, it may be more relevant now than ever before. Because modern people have become experts at avoiding discomfort. The moment boredom appears, they reach for their phones. The moment sadness appears, they search for distractions. The moment difficulty appears, they look for escape routes. But Marcus Aurelius believed something completely different. He believed hard times were not interruptions to life. They were part of life itself. And that single realization changes everything. Most people spend years believing happiness means the absence of problems. They tell themselves things like, I will finally be happy when I earn more money. I will finally relax when I solve this problem. I will finally feel peace when life becomes easier. But life rarely works that way. One problem disappears and another arrives. One challenge ends and a new one begins. One fear leaves and another takes its place. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. He understood that waiting for a perfect future was a dangerous trap, because the person waiting for a problem-free life is waiting for something that does not exist. Think about that for a moment. How much of your life have you spent telling yourself that happiness is somewhere in the future? How many times have you believed that one more achievement, one more success, or one more victory would finally remove all your struggles? Marcus Aurelius would probably tell you that this way of thinking creates unnecessary suffering, because it teaches people to reject the present moment. Instead of learning how to live through difficulty, they spend their energy wishing difficulty would disappear. And while they wait, life passes by. This idea became especially important during one of the hardest periods of Marcus Aurelius' reign. At the height of his power, a deadly plague spread throughout the Roman Empire. People died in enormous numbers. Entire communities suffered. Fear spread faster than certainty. No emperor, no matter how powerful, could simply make the crisis disappear. Imagine carrying that responsibility. Imagine knowing millions of people depend on your decisions. Imagine waking up every morning knowing that no matter what you do, some problems cannot be solved immediately. Most people would panic. Most people would become overwhelmed. Many would become bitter. But Marcus Aurelius approached hardship differently. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" he focused on a different question. What does this situation require from me? That shift may sound small, but psychologically, it changes everything. Because when people ask, "Why is this happening to me?" they often become trapped. They begin looking backward. They search for blame. They replay events over and over. They focus on things they cannot change. But when a person asks, "What does this situation require from me?" their attention moves forward. Now they are looking for action. Now they are looking for strength. Now they are looking for solutions. Marcus Aurelius understood that hard times reveal character, not because suffering is magical, but because difficulty forces people to make choices. When life becomes difficult, you discover how patient you really are. You discover how disciplined you really are. You discover how strong your mindset truly is. Comfort hides weaknesses. Hardship exposes them. And that can be uncomfortable, because most people prefer the version of themselves they imagine rather than the version revealed by reality. It is easy to believe you are patient when nothing tests your patience. It is easy to believe you are disciplined when life is easy. It is easy to believe you are strong when everything is going your way. The real test comes when circumstances turn against you. That is where character is revealed. And Marcus Aurelius knew this better than almost anyone, because every day he faced situations that would have broken many people: political enemies, military conflicts, personal losses, uncertainty about the future. Yet throughout all of it, he kept returning to the same idea: the obstacle is not your enemy. Your response to the obstacle is what matters. This was one of the foundations of Stoic philosophy. Most people see difficulty as evidence that something has gone wrong. Marcus Aurelius saw difficulty as evidence that life was being life. Nothing more, nothing less. The storm is not personal. The setback is not personal. The challenge is not proof that the universe has chosen you for suffering. It is simply part of being human. And strangely enough, accepting that reality often makes suffering easier to bear, because resistance adds weight to pain. Acceptance removes some of that weight. Not all of it, but enough to make movement possible. And that brings us to one of the most powerful lessons Marcus Aurelius ever wrote about hard times, a lesson that completely changed the way he viewed adversity. And once you understand it, you may never look at your struggles the same way again. The lesson Marcus Aurelius returned to again and again was surprisingly simple. But simple does not mean easy. In fact, this idea may be one of the hardest truths a person can accept. You cannot control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond. At first glance, that sounds obvious. Most people hear it and immediately move on. But Marcus Aurelius spent years trying to master this principle because he understood something most people miss. Nearly all human suffering begins when we try to control things that were never ours to control in the first place. Think about how much energy people waste every day, worrying about other people's opinions, worrying about the future, worrying about situations that have not even happened yet, worrying about outcomes they cannot guarantee. Their minds become battlefields, not because reality is attacking them, but because they are fighting wars they cannot possibly win. Marcus Aurelius knew this feeling well. Imagine being the emperor of Rome. Millions of people depended on your leadership. Generals reported from distant battlefields. Political rivals watched every move you made. The future of an empire rested on decisions that often had no perfect answer. Every day brought uncertainty. Every day brought risk. Every day brought the possibility of failure. Yet Marcus Aurelius understood something important. No amount of worrying could change reality. No amount of anxiety could guarantee success. No amount of fear could prevent hardship. And once he accepted that truth, something powerful happened. His attention shifted away from outcomes and toward actions. That distinction changed his life. Most people focus on results. Marcus Aurelius focused on behavior. Most people ask, "What if I fail?" Marcus Aurelius asked, "What is the right thing to do right now?" Most people become obsessed with tomorrow. Marcus Aurelius focused on today. And honestly, this may be one of the reasons so many people feel overwhelmed in modern life. Their minds are constantly living in the future, thinking about next week, next month, next year, imagining disasters that have not happened, creating problems that do not yet exist. The Stoics had a word for this. They called it suffering in imagination. And Marcus Aurelius believed human beings often suffer more from their imagination than from reality itself. Think about your own life. How many times have you spent hours worrying about something only to discover it was never as bad as you expected? How many nights have you lost sleep over situations that eventually worked themselves out? How many fears turned out to be stories your mind created? This is what Marcus Aurelius was warning against. Not preparation, not responsibility, but unnecessary mental suffering. Because every moment spent fighting imaginary problems is a moment stolen from real life. And hard times become even harder when the mind starts working against itself. That is why Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to return to the present moment. Not because the present was always pleasant, but because the present was where action was possible. You cannot act in yesterday. You cannot act in tomorrow. You can only act now. And this brings us to another realization Marcus Aurelius had during difficult times. A realization that completely changed the way he viewed obstacles. Most people believe obstacles stand in the way of progress. Marcus Aurelius believed obstacles create progress. Read that again. Most people see problems as barriers. Marcus Aurelius saw problems as training. That idea sounds strange until you examine your own life. Think about the strongest people you know. Were they created by comfort? Were they shaped by easy circumstances? Probably not. The strongest people are often those who have endured the most. People who faced setbacks. People who survived loss. People who kept moving forward when life became difficult. Because hardship develops qualities that comfort cannot. patience, resilience, discipline, perspective, mental toughness. These qualities are forged through resistance. Just like muscles grow through stress, character grows through challenge. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. Every hardship carried a hidden opportunity, not an opportunity to enjoy suffering, not an opportunity to pretend pain feels good, but an opportunity to develop strength. And this is where Stoicism differs from ordinary optimism. Ordinary optimism says, everything will be fine. Stoicism says, maybe everything will not be fine, but you can still handle it. That is a much more powerful mindset, because it does not depend on circumstances. It depends on character, and character remains available even when everything else falls apart. Imagine how different your life becomes once you understand this. A setback is no longer proof that you are doomed. It becomes training. A failure is no longer evidence that you should quit. It becomes feedback. A difficult season is no longer a sign that life is against you. It becomes an opportunity to grow. This does not remove pain. Marcus Aurelius never claimed that. Pain remains real. Loss remains painful. Grief remains painful. Disappointment remains painful. Stoicism does not erase suffering. It changes your relationship with suffering. And that distinction matters, because many people spend their entire lives waiting for hardship to disappear. Marcus Aurelius believed a better approach was to become stronger than the hardship itself. Think about that. You cannot always control the storm, but you can become a better sailor. You cannot control every challenge, but you can control the person facing the challenge. And ultimately, that is where real power exists, not in controlling the world, but in controlling yourself. However, there was another lesson Marcus Aurelius learned during difficult times, a lesson that might be even more important today than it was 2,000 years ago, because this lesson explains why so many people break under pressure while others somehow remain calm. And it all begins with a dangerous mistake that almost everyone makes when life becomes hard. Most people take hardship personally. They believe difficult circumstances are happening specifically to them. They ask, why me? Why now? What did I do to deserve this? And those questions often lead nowhere, because life is not targeting anyone. Hardship is part of the human experience. Rich people suffer, poor people suffer, powerful people suffer, ordinary people suffer, emperors suffer. Everyone suffers. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most, and once he accepted it, he stopped wasting energy arguing with reality. Instead of saying, this should not be happening, he learned to say, this is happening. Now what? That shift transformed the way he handled adversity. And in the next part of this story, we are going to explore what may be the most powerful thing Marcus Aurelius ever said about hard times. Because once he stopped asking why suffering existed, he discovered something far more important. He discovered how suffering could transform a person. And that realization would become one of the greatest lessons in the history of Stoicism. There was a reason Marcus Aurelius kept returning to hardship in his writings. Not because he enjoyed suffering, not because he believed pain was good, but because he noticed something that most people never see. Hard times have a way of revealing the truth. When life is comfortable, it is easy to believe certain things about yourself. It is easy to think you are patient, easy to think you are disciplined, easy to think you are strong. But comfort never asks for proof. Hardship does. And that is why difficult seasons often feel so uncomfortable, because they force us to confront parts of ourselves we would rather ignore. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. Every challenge carried a mirror. A difficult person tested your patience. A setback tested your resilience. A loss tested your perspective. An uncertainty tested your courage. And whether you passed those tests or failed them, you learned something important about yourself. This is one of the reasons Marcus Aurelius believed hardship could become a teacher. Not because suffering automatically improves people. Many people become bitter. Many people become angry. Many people allow pain to make them smaller. The lesson only appears if you are willing to learn. Think about some of the strongest people you know. The people who remain calm during chaos. The people who do not panic when things go wrong. The people who seem grounded no matter what happens. Most of them were not created by easy circumstances. They were shaped by challenges. They learned lessons that comfort could never teach. Marcus Aurelius knew this from experience. Every war taught him something. Every crisis taught him something. Every setback forced him to adapt. And slowly, he realized a truth that would become central to Stoicism. The obstacle is not merely in the path. The obstacle becomes the path. That idea sounds strange at first. But think about it carefully. A person who never experiences rejection never learns resilience. A person who never experiences failure never develops perseverance. A person who never experiences difficulty rarely discovers their true strength. The very thing you wish would disappear may be the thing creating the person you are becoming. This does not make pain pleasant. It does not erase grief. It does not remove hardship, but it gives suffering meaning. And meaning changes everything. Human beings can endure remarkable difficulties when they believe those difficulties are serving a purpose. Marcus Aurelius understood this. That is why he refused to see himself as a victim of circumstance, even during the worst periods of his life, even when events were outside his control, even when outcomes were uncertain. He focused on one question. What virtue does this situation require? Patience? Then practice patience. Courage? Then practice courage. Discipline? Then practice discipline. Instead of asking life to become easier, he asked himself to become stronger. That shift transformed everything, because most people spend years trying to change circumstances. Marcus Aurelius spent years developing character, and character remains valuable regardless of circumstance. Money can disappear, status can disappear, health can change, fortunes can reverse, but character stays with you. That is why the Stoics valued it above everything else. They believed the strongest foundation a person can build is not external success. It is internal strength. And hard times are often where that strength is forged. Yet there was one final realization Marcus Aurelius had about hardship. A realization that may be the most important lesson of all, because it explains why some people remain trapped by suffering while others emerge transformed. And it begins with our relationship to time. Most people assume hard times will last forever while they are experiencing them. Pain creates that illusion. When you're struggling, every day feels longer. Every setback feels heavier. Every uncertainty feels permanent. But Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of something simple. Everything changes. Everything passes. Everything moves. The difficult season will eventually end. The challenge will eventually change. The pain will eventually evolve into something else. Nothing remains exactly as it is forever. And remembering that truth helped him endure moments that would have overwhelmed many people. Because he understood something powerful. Temporary pain should never be allowed to define a permanent identity. Just because you are struggling today does not mean you are destined to struggle forever. Just because you failed does not mean you are a failure. Just because life is difficult right now does not mean life will always be difficult. The mind often confuses the present moment with the future. Marcus Aurelius refused to make that mistake. He stayed where life actually existed, in the present. One decision, one action, one step at a time. This focus on the present moment may be one of the greatest lessons Marcus Aurelius ever left behind. Because when people face hard times, they often try to solve their entire future at once. They want certainty. They want guarantees. They want immediate answers. But life rarely provides those things. Marcus Aurelius understood that the future is often hidden from us, and worrying about what cannot yet be known creates unnecessary suffering. So instead of carrying the weight of tomorrow, he focused on today's responsibility. Not the next year, not the next decade. Today. What can be done today? What action can be taken today? What virtue can be practiced today? That mindset allowed him to remain steady even when circumstances were chaotic. And perhaps that is what makes his words so relevant nearly 2,000 years later. Because modern people are surrounded by uncertainty. Economic uncertainty, relationship uncertainty, career uncertainty, social uncertainty. The future feels unpredictable. And when the future feels unpredictable, fear grows. Marcus Aurelius would not tell people to ignore uncertainty. He would tell them to stop surrendering their peace to it, because uncertainty has always existed. Every generation has faced it. Every civilization has faced it. The difference is how people respond. Some become consumed by fear. Others become guided by purpose. Marcus Aurelius chose purpose, again and again, even when life became difficult, even when the future was unclear, even when circumstances seemed unfair. And perhaps that is the true Stoic response to hardship. Not denial, not blind optimism, not pretending everything is wonderful, but meeting reality with courage, looking directly at difficulty without turning away, accepting what cannot be changed, improving what can be changed, and refusing to allow adversity to destroy your character. Because in the end, Marcus Aurelius believed something most people spend their entire lives forgetting. Hard times do not define you. Your response to hard times defines you. The setback is not your identity. The loss is not your identity. The failure is not your identity. The struggle is not your identity. They are experiences. They are chapters. They are moments in a much larger story, and stories continue. That is why Marcus Aurelius never measured a person by what happened to them. He measured them by how they responded. Anyone can remain calm when life is easy. Anyone can feel confident when everything is going their way. The true test begins when circumstances become difficult, when the plan falls apart, when the outcome is uncertain, when the path forward becomes unclear. That is when character speaks. That is when values matter. That is when strength is revealed. And perhaps that is the greatest message Marcus Aurelius left behind. Hardship is not proof that life is against you. Hardship is proof that you are alive. Every human being will face loss. Every human being will face uncertainty. Every human being will experience disappointment. The question is not whether hard times will come. The question is who you will become when they do. Will you become bitter or wiser? Will you become weaker or stronger? Will you allow adversity to break you, or will you allow it to build you? Marcus Aurelius believed that answer belongs to you, not to circumstances, not to luck, not to fate, to you. And that may be the most empowering idea in all of Stoicism, because it means that even during your darkest moments, there is still something that remains under your control: your attitude, your choices, your character, your response. The world may take many things from you, but it cannot take that. And perhaps that is why the writings of Marcus Aurelius continue to survive after nearly 2,000 years. Not because he promised an easy life, but because he showed people how to remain strong when life becomes difficult. He showed them how to face uncertainty without panic, how to face loss without surrender, how to face hardship without losing themselves. And maybe that is exactly what so many people need to hear today. Not that hard times will disappear, not that life will suddenly become easy, but that they are stronger than they realize, that they can endure more than they think, that difficult seasons do not last forever, and that within every challenge lies an opportunity to become someone wiser, stronger, and more resilient than before. Because in the end, Marcus Aurelius never asked life to be easier. He asked himself to be better. And perhaps that is the lesson worth remembering the next time life becomes hard. Not, why is this happening to me? But who will I become because of it? The answer to that question may shape the rest of your life.